game came and went. No WNBA Players Union strike was present. And now this morning we get this word of Breanna Stewart going to play overseas. Well, that's kind of interesting. Now, she's a member, a vice president, part of the Players Union committee, and she's going to take another job.
The most powerful woman in the WNBA just made a move that could shake the entire league. And it didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened at the airport. Breanna Stewart, two-time MVP, face of the New York Liberty, and vice president of the Women's National Basketball Players Association, has reportedly signed a short-term deal overseas with Fenerbahce SK to compete in the EuroLeague Women Final Six. On the surface, that might not seem unusual. WNBA stars have played overseas for years. Bigger paydays, global exposure, that's nothing new. But here, where it gets uncomfortable, the EuroLeague Final Six runs right up against the start of WNBA training camp. At the exact moment, the league is supposed to be preparing for one of the most anticipated seasons in its history. One of its most influential leaders is boarding a flight across the Atlantic. And this isn't happening in a vacuum. The WNBA is currently in high-stakes collective bargaining discussions. Commissioner Adam Silver has already signaled urgency around negotiations. Fans are watching closely, networks are watching even closer, and the league is riding unprecedented momentum fueled by rookies like Caitlin Clark. So when a union vice president locks in an overseas commitment during this fragile window, people start asking questions. Is this just smart business, or is it a quiet signal that something bigger is brewing behind the scenes? Because when leadership makes a move like this, it rarely means nothing. And if you follow the timeline carefully, this might be more than just a basketball trip to Turkey. Here, where the situation stops being routine and starts raising eyebrows. The EuroLeague Women Final Six is scheduled for mid-April, wrapping up right as WNBA training camp is set to begin. Not a month before, not weeks earlier, the same window. Now, under normal circumstances, overseas play isn't shocking. For years, WNBA stars have supplemented their income abroad. But this moment isn't normal. The Women's National Basketball Association is entering one of the most critical off-seasons in its history, with a new collective bargaining agreement still being negotiated between the league and the Women's National Basketball Players Association. And that's what makes the timing feel loaded. Breanna Stewart isn't just another player heading overseas. She's a vice president of the union. She's part of the leadership group expected to sit across from ownership and hammer out the future of the league. So when she signs with Fenerbahce SK during this exact window, fans and analysts naturally begin connecting dots. There's also the prioritization clause to consider, a rule established in previous negotiations that requires players to report to WNBA training camp on time or risk penalties. If enforced strictly, missing camp for overseas obligations could have consequences. Whether that applies here depends on scheduling details and league discretion, but the overlap is enough to spark debate. Some observers believe this could be a strategic signal. Perhaps it's leverage, a reminder that elite players still have lucrative options outside the WNBA. Others see it as a practical decision, a short-term commitment that won't meaningfully interfere with league duties. But perception matters. When the league is trying to project stability, growth, and momentum, especially with new fans tuning in, even the appearance of uncertainty can create tension. And right now, the calendar is doing all the talking. Because when leadership books international flights during crunch time, people don't just see travel plans. They see a message. And the bigger question becomes, is this simply business as usual or a subtle indication that the 2026 season's timeline isn't as secure as everyone hopes? This isn't just about one contract, it's about timing and pressure. Right now, the Women's National Basketball Association and the Women's National Basketball Players Association are deep in collective bargaining negotiations. A new CBA will determine revenue sharing, salaries, benefits, travel standards, and the long-term financial structure of the league. In other words, it's not just paperwork, it's the blueprint for the next decade of women's basketball. And the clock is ticking. Adam Silver has publicly acknowledged urgency around getting a deal done. While no official deadline has been declared publicly as catastrophic, the underlying message has been clear. Delays would create serious complications. A stalled agreement could mean training camp disruptions. In worst-case scenarios, and this is purely speculative, a delayed season isn't impossible if negotiations break down. That's why Stewart's overseas move hits differently right now. Because Breanna Stewart isn't just negotiating for herself. As a vice president of the union, she's part of the small leadership group tasked with representing every player in the league, from superstars to rookies fighting for roster spots. When a key negotiator commits to being overseas during this tense stretch, it creates optics that people can't ignore. Some fans believe this could signal confidence. Maybe leadership feels a deal is close, making the scheduling overlap irrelevant. Others speculate it could be leverage, a reminder to ownership that elite players still have international options if domestic compensation doesn't meet expectations. There's no confirmation of either theory, but the timing fuels the conversation. And here's the real tension. The WNBA is experiencing unprecedented momentum. Ticket sales are surging, media rights are expanding, mainstream coverage is finally catching up. This CBA negotiation isn't happening during a quiet rebuild year. It's happening during a breakout moment, which means any instability feels amplified. In high-growth periods, leagues can't afford uncertainty. Investors want clarity, networks want guarantees, fans want consistency. So when leadership appears to step away, even temporarily, it intensifies scrutiny. Because in moments like this, perception becomes reality. And right now, the perception is simple. The pressure inside those negotiation rooms is higher than it's ever been. This is where the conversation shifts from contracts to credibility. Breanna Stewart isn't just another all-star chasing an overseas check. She's a vice president of the Women's National Basketball Players Association. That title carries weight. It means leadership, representation, responsibility. When negotiations with the Women's National Basketball Association are this tense, optics matter just as much as strategy. And right now, the optics are complicated. Fair or not, fans and analysts are asking, what message does it send when a union leader commits to playing abroad during one of the most sensitive labor moments in league history, even if the trip is short, even if the scheduling technically works out? The perception becomes larger than the logistics. For younger players, especially those on minimum contracts, union leadership represents stability. These are athletes who can't afford a prolonged dispute. They don't have massive endorsement deals. They rely on the season starting on time. So when leadership appears to step away during crunch time, it can create unease, even if that unease isn't publicly voiced. Now, to be clear, there's no confirmed breakdown in negotiations. There's no official announcement of delays. And Stewart hasn't indicated she's abandoning her union duties. It's entirely possible she can manage both responsibilities without conflict. But leadership isn't judged only on what is technically allowed. It's judged on perception, timing, and symbolism. Some believe this is a calculated power move, projecting confidence that the union has leverage. Others interpret it as a signal that top-tier stars will be financially secure no matter what happens domestically. Neither interpretation has been confirmed, but both narratives are gaining traction online. And in moments of uncertainty, narratives spread fast. Because when you hold a leadership title during high-stakes negotiations, every move carries amplified meaning. Every decision is analyzed. Every trip becomes symbolic. Right now, the question is whether playing overseas is legal or even logical. The question is whether it looks unified. And in labor disputes, unity isn't just important, it's everything. Now we get to the rule that quietly changed everything. During the last round of negotiations, the Women's National Basketball Association implemented what's known as the prioritization clause. The idea was simple. If players wanted the league to grow, the WNBA had to come first. That meant reporting to training camp on time, no overseas delays, no extended international commitments bleeding into the domestic season. Miss camp without an approved exception, and penalties could follow. At the time, the clause sparked debate. Many players felt it limited their earning power, especially since overseas leagues often pay significantly more. Owners argued it was necessary to protect the integrity of the WNBA season. It was framed as a step toward long-term stability. Fast forward to now. Breanna Stewart signing with Fenerbahce SK for the EuroLeague Women Final 6 places the clause back under microscope. The tournament ends right as WNBA training camp is scheduled to begin. If everything runs precisely on time, the overlap could be razor thin. If there are delays, even minor ones, the situation gets more complicated. Now there's no confirmed violation here. Scheduling details matter, travel timing matters, league discretion matters, but the optics of even brushing up against that rule are powerful, especially when it involves a union vice president. Some fans are speculating that this is intentional, a subtle challenge, a way of testing how strictly the league would enforce its own rule against one of its biggest stars. That interpretation hasn't been confirmed, but it's circulating online. Others argue this highlights a deeper issue. If the WNBA still requires players to seek higher pay overseas, then the financial structure remains unbalanced. In that view, Stewart's move isn't rebellion, it's proof that the economics still need fixing. But here's the risk. If the league enforces the clause aggressively, it creates tension with its most marketable players. If it doesn't enforce it, the rule begins to look symbolic rather than authoritative. Either way, it becomes a high-stakes gamble. Because when a rule designed to establish control meets a superstar willing to test its limits, the outcome doesn't just affect one player. It shapes the power balance of the entire league moving forward. Here where things get complicated. Because Breanna Stewart isn't just a WNBA superstar navigating overseas contracts, she's also a co-founder of Unrivaled, the new domestic 3-on-3 league created alongside Nafisa Collier. And the entire pitch behind Unrivaled was bold. The goal: keep elite women's basketball players in the United States during the off-season, pay them competitively, protect their bodies from exhausting international travel, build year-round domestic hype, create a sustainable ecosystem that reduces the need to chase overseas money. It was positioned as a solution. For years, critics pointed out that top WNBA players had to fly overseas just to earn what their talent deserved. Unrivaled was marketed as a turning point, a modern, player-driven alternative. Investors bought into it. Fans applauded it. The messaging was clear: we're building something better here at home. So when Stewart signs a short-term deal abroad with Fenerbahce SK for the EuroLeague Women Final 6, some observers see irony. If Unrivaled was designed to reduce reliance on overseas income, why step back into that exact system, especially during a delicate CBA negotiation window? Now, to be fair, Unrivaled isn't meant to eliminate every international opportunity. It's not a full replacement for global competition, and one short tournament doesn't erase its mission. That's important context. But perception doesn't always operate on nuance. Online, some fans are speculating that this move undermines the original message. Others argue it simply proves that international basketball remains financially attractive at the highest levels. Neither interpretation has been officially confirmed by Stewart or Unrivaled leadership, but the contrast is hard to ignore. And here's the broader issue. If even the architects of a domestic alternative still find overseas offers compelling, it raises questions about the overall economics of women's basketball. Is the system truly evolving, or is it still dependent on international dollars at the top tier? Because when your brand is built on reshaping the model, and then you momentarily return to the old one, people notice. And in a season already surrounded by negotiation pressure, even symbolic contradictions feel amplified. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The Women's National Basketball Association isn't just negotiating a CBA right now, it's negotiating during the biggest momentum surge in its history. And at the center of that surge is one name, Caitlin Clark. Clark didn't just enter the league, she shifted it. Last season brought record-breaking attendance, sold-out arenas on the road, and unprecedented media coverage. Casual sports fans who had never watched a WNBA game suddenly tuned in. Jersey sales exploded. Ticket resale prices climbed. Conversations about women's basketball spilled into mainstream sports debate shows. That kind of lightning rarely strikes twice. And that's why timing matters so much. The league is supposed to capitalize on this moment. Year 2 of the Clark era isn't just another season, it's a test. Can the WNBA convert curiosity into loyalty? Can it turn viral moments into sustained growth? The answer depends heavily on consistency. If the 2026 season starts smoothly in May, momentum builds. If it stumbles even slightly, the energy cools. Casual fans don't track collective bargaining updates. They don't study prioritization clauses. They don't analyze negotiation leverage. They just know one thing: games are supposed to start in May. If May arrives and there's uncertainty, whether from delays, labor tension, or negative headlines, some of those new viewers may drift back to the NBA, the NFL, or whatever else dominates the sports cycle. Attention spans are short. Sports markets are crowded. Now, to be clear, there's no official indication the season won't begin as scheduled. Negotiations are ongoing. A deal could be finalized without disruption. That's entirely possible. But when high-profile developments like Breanna Stewart's overseas commitment surface during this fragile window, speculation grows louder. And speculation, in a growth phase, can be damaging. Because the Clark effect isn't just about one player. It represents millions of new eyeballs, corporate sponsorship interest, media leverage, cultural relevance. It's the first time the league feels like it's operating from a position of mainstream strength. The danger isn't collapse. The danger is lost momentum. And in sports, momentum is everything. Which raises the real question: can the WNBA navigate high-stakes negotiations without disrupting the most valuable growth wave it has ever experienced? Here, where this situation shifts from player decisions to corporate pressure. The Women's National Basketball Association isn't just riding cultural momentum, it's riding media momentum. The league recently secured major broadcast partnerships with companies like the Walt Disney Company, NBC Universal, and Amazon. These deals represent long-term belief in the league's growth trajectory. And make no mistake, media companies don't invest out of sentiment. They invest in reliability. When networks commit billions across sports portfolios, they're buying scheduled programming, guaranteed inventory, and predictable audience engagement. They're banking on stars like Caitlin Clark, A'ja Wilson, and Breanna Stewart taking the floor in May, not headlines about labor uncertainty. Now, to be clear, there's no official announcement suggesting these deals are in jeopardy. Negotiations between the league and the Women's National Basketball Players Association are ongoing. A smooth agreement could make all current speculation irrelevant. But here's the uncomfortable truth: broadcast partners hate unpredictability. If, and this is purely speculative, training camps were delayed or the season start date shifted due to labor friction, it wouldn't just affect fans. It would affect ad inventory, primetime scheduling, cross-network promotions, streaming rollouts. These are billion-dollar ecosystems with little tolerance for instability. And that's why every move during this window carries amplified weight. When a high-profile union leader commits to overseas play during the same stretch negotiations are heating up, it feeds a narrative of uncertainty. Fair or not, perception trickles upward. Executives notice headlines, analysts notice trends, investors notice tone shifts. In high-growth phases, leagues are judged not just by performance, but by governance. Right now, the WNBA is transitioning from emerging property to mainstream sports asset. That evolution requires stability, clear timelines, unified messaging. The danger isn't that networks immediately walk away. That's unlikely. The danger is leverage. If instability creeps into the conversation, partners gain negotiating power in future discussions. And in sports media, leverage equals dollars. So while fans debate contracts and clauses, a quieter audience is watching closely, the billion-dollar broadcasters who expect one thing above all else: a season that starts exactly when it's supposed to. But what if this isn't chaos? What if it's strategy? There's a real possibility that Breanna Stewart's overseas commitment isn't a sign of panic. It's a calculated pressure tactic. High-level labor negotiations often involve quiet signals, and sometimes those signals aren't delivered in press conferences. They're delivered through action. Think about the message this could send to the Women's National Basketball Association ownership group. Elite players still have options. If the union is pushing for a more favorable revenue split, higher maximum salaries, or improved benefits, showing that top stars can earn substantial money abroad reinforces their bargaining position. It subtly communicates, we are not financially trapped, we are not dependent on one system. From that perspective, Stewart's signing with Fenerbahce SK for the EuroLeague Women Final Six could be interpreted as leverage, a reminder that the global market values WNBA talent highly. Now it's important to be clear, there has been no official statement confirming this is a coordinated strategy by the Women's National Basketball Players Association. This interpretation is speculative, but it's one that's gaining traction among fans and analysts. However, leverage plays come with risk. Because if ownership perceives the move as a challenge rather than a negotiation tactic, tensions can escalate quickly. Billionaire owners and corporate backers don't typically respond well to perceived ultimatums. They respond to business logic. And the business logic right now says the league must capitalize on its current growth window. There's also a personal risk factor. If Stewart plays high-intensity championship basketball overseas and returns fatigued, or worse, injured, it impacts not just negotiations, but the on-court product. The New York Liberty's season could be affected. National broadcast matchups could lose star power. Momentum could stall. That's a dangerous gamble. So maybe this is leverage. Maybe it's just business. Or maybe it's both. But in high-stakes negotiations, even strategic moves can spiral if miscalculated. And if this is a game of chicken between players and ownership, one thing is certain. Neither side can afford to blink at the wrong time. This isn't just about one player, and it isn't just about one overseas contract. It's about timing. The Women's National Basketball Association is standing at the most important crossroads in its history. On one side, there's unprecedented growth, record attendance, national attention, and a surge powered by stars like Caitlin Clark, A'ja Wilson, and Breanna Stewart. On the other side, there's a high-stakes collective bargaining negotiation that will determine how that growth is distributed for years to come. Moments like this define leagues. Stewart's decision to compete overseas with Fenerbahce SK in the EuroLeague Women Final Six might ultimately prove harmless. Training camp could begin on time. A new CBA could be finalized smoothly. The season could launch in May without disruption, and today's speculation could fade into the background. That's absolutely possible. But perception has already shifted. When a vice president of the Women's National Basketball Players Association makes a move during negotiation season, it invites scrutiny. Some see it as smart business. Others see it as leverage. A few see it as risky optics at a fragile moment. And that tension reflects something bigger. The league is no longer fighting for relevance. It's fighting to protect momentum. Growth creates pressure. Visibility creates accountability. And every decision now carries amplified consequences. The real question isn't whether Stewart should chase another opportunity. Professional athletes have short careers. Financial security matters. The real question is this: can the league's leadership, both players and owners, navigate this turning point without fracturing trust or stalling progress? Because this next agreement won't just shape salaries, it will shape perception, stability, power balance. And when May arrives, fans won't remember negotiation details. They'll remember one thing: did the season tip off on time? That answer will say more about the league's future than any overseas contract ever could.